Welcome to Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. Now let's join our host, Tom Shorkey.
Welcome to Conversations. I'm your host for today's program, a gentleman who has been inducted into 3 different Hall of Fames. He is a Michigan Coaches Hall of Fame. He is a Catholic League Hall of Fame. He is in the Port Huron Sports Hall of Fame. He's been a combination football coach, athletic director for well over 50 years. And what we are going to do today is talk about the career and some of the insights of one of the most recognizable names in high school coaching in the state of Michigan and a longtime resident of the Blue Water area. With me today is Ken Semelsberger. Welcome to the show. Well, you know, we're going to talk a lot of football. We're going to talk a lot of Catholic League, Port Huron Area School District. But for our audience at home, can you give us a little background on little Kenny Semelsberger? Where did you grow up?
Okay, I grew up on the east side of Detroit, a little neighborhood on the east side by Semelsberger High School, and that's where I went to high school at, St. John Birchman's Elementary. I'm one of 8 boys. My dad worked in a Bud Wheel factory on the east side of Detroit, and he would actually walk to work every day. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom until my dad passed away when I was 7, and she raised 8 boys, and then she went to work at the Catholic school at St. John Birchman in Semelsberger. One of the priests offered her a job in the cafeteria, and she worked there all the way till she was 70. So she worked there for probably 35 years after my dad died. She worked at the church school and then at the convent.
Well, with 8 Semelsberger brothers, where'd you fit on the pecking order?
I was number 7. I'm the 7th son of the boys.
So you probably got thumped around in the backyard or on the school playground by those older brothers.
I did, and I felt sorry for my younger brother David because he kind of got me too.
and not to age either of us, but back when you were at Semelsberger High School, I did a little research on that, and I believe there were approximately 70 Catholic high schools in Wayne County. And if you add Macomb and St. Clair County into it, back in the mid-60s, there were approximately 90 Catholic high schools. Who'd you play against down there?
Oh, we played, when I was there, our big rivalries were Shrine. Royal Oak Shrine was one of our big rivalries. We were in the AA division. So we played Shrine, we played Divine Child, we played Bishop Gallagher, we played the bigger Catholic school, Bishop Borges at the time. Those were the bigger Catholic high schools. And then we would cross over and play the De La Salles and Notre Dames, and especially when I was coaching, we'd cross over with all those schools too. So that's who we played. Well, but there was a ton of small schools.
From playing football with your brothers on the parking lot of Semelsberger High School through the time you were in high school, at what point did you say, you know what, when I get my chance, I want to be a teacher and a coach? How'd that happen? And
it happened actually when I was at Wayne State, and I started there, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. In my sophomore year in 1967, a guy by the name of Dario Shenga, who was also an assistant coach at Semelsberger, coached 7th and 8th grade basketball at St. Jude's Catholic school on the east side, and he needed a 5th and 6th grade basketball coach. He said, Kenny, I was playing football at college. He says, in your off season, what are you doing? I goes, nothing much. He goes, well, I need a coach. Why don't you come help me out? So I coached 5th and 6th grade basketball, and that just kind of lit the fire. It was like after that, I said, I really like this. So from there, the next year, I went to St. John Birchman's and coached their 5th and 6th grade basketball team. Then I graduated from Wayne State, and when I graduated from Wayne State, I got hired at Semelsberger as teacher, coach, whatever they needed. I was an assistant football coach. And
now, did you play football at Wayne State?
Yes, I did. I was center and outside linebacker.
And what were your dimensions?
Back then I was about 6 foot, about 225.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit bigger than that now, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. That happens there.
That happens everywhere, so that's all right.
All right, you get back to Servite. You're back to your roots. Was your mother still in the office there? Or
My mother was still there. Yep, she was. When I was teaching there, she was, actually at that time, she was across the street working at the convent, cooking for the nuns at the convent.
Now, when you went back to Servite, obviously they don't hire 22-year-olds to be varsity coaches, but you worked with all the other teams and the other sports. How old were you when you got that first varsity job?
24. I wasn't ready. And no, I got the job. What had happened was that a little interesting story. I was at home. This was during the spring. I want to say like in April and early May, and I was home getting ready to come to work, and I get a call from the football coach at the time, a guy by the name of Mike D'Angelo. Mike called me and said, "Hey, Kenny, meet me at school as soon as you can." So I hustle up, get dressed, and I get to school, and then Mike's there, and he says, "Kenny, I just got the job at Lakeshore High School, and I'm going to be leaving." And at that moment, Jack Carroll walked in, who was the athletic director, and Mike says, and I told him that he was leaving, and Mike told me he was going to recommend me for the job, and before Mike could say anything, Jack Carroll turned and looked at me and says, "Well, you're the new head football coach. What are you going to do?" Mm-hmm. That was my interview.
Oh, cool.
So I got the job right then and there. So I was 24.
Now, how long actually were you varsity coach at Servite?
I was varsity coach there for 7 years.
7 years.
Yep.
Well, you got inducted into the Catholic League Coaches Hall of Fame, so you must have had a couple of decent teams.
Oh yeah, we did. We won the division a couple of times, but I think it was also because I had a pretty good career as a player, so it was a combination of player and coach. So I got inducted in 1981, and it was way too young to do that.
Yeah.
I thought these were for older guys or guys that were dead. I said,
yeah.
Well,
I'm glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, then, Ken, you're at Servite, and after you've been there for about 7 years or so, the Catholic schools were starting to fade a little bit.
Yeah.
The kids that went to them were growing up and moving to the suburbs, and the Livonias and the Warrens and the St. Clair Shores were all really growing, but the Catholic schools started to fade away. And at some point, did you think, maybe I should do something besides coach at Servite?
I really didn't think that far ahead at the time. I enjoyed what I was doing. I was there, but I knew that not necessarily the end for Servite was there, but the Catholic League was declining in numbers. A lot of schools were closing. All the St. Roses and the St. Martins and a lot of the small schools on the east side were all closing. And as a result, we were getting some of those kids, but a lot of the kids were leaving the area completely and going to the suburbs and the public schools out in the suburbs.
Well, tell us about the away football game that Servite had, and you took on a big school up in St. Clair County, and you took your band of, what was the Servite?
We were Panthers. We were Panthers.
You took your band of Panthers up to Port Huron to play Port Huron High.
No, we didn't play Port Huron. We played Port Huron Central.
Oh, Central.
Yes, what happened, which is still a lot bigger than we were.
Yeah.
So I was looking for our first game of the season. We couldn't find anybody. We were pretty good, but we were a small school, and a lot of schools wouldn't play us. So we decided we got a chance to play Port Huron Central. And Gary Nesbitt was the coach at the time, and then Lonnie Rakowski were the coaches there. So I got a chance they said they would play us. So I remember getting off the bus with our 28, 29 player squad, and we from varsity, and we walked in. I remember one of the kids turned to me and said, "Coach, you're taking us to a pro football or college football stadium to play?" At Port Huron Stadium, which is the finest place in the state to play a high school football game. So we do pretty well. We win the game. And after the game, we're getting ready to get on the bus, and a gentleman come up who I did not know, and he introduced himself as Chet Wodrinski. And there was also another guy with him. He introduced himself as the band director, Eric Payton.
Oh, yeah.
So the two of them stopped me, and Chet asked me, he says, "How would you like to coach here?" And I goes, "Well, I really don't know much about it, but I'd be interested." So he asked me for my number. I give him my number. I don't hear anything, and January comes along, and I get a phone call. And it's Chet Wodrinski. Says, "When can you be here for an interview?" Interview? I didn't even know I was applying, but so I set up to come in for an interview. So I go down and interview, and as I'm leaving the interview, and there were still other people he was going to interview, he pulled me aside and said, "How soon can you be here?" And I said, oh, well, I haven't talked to my wife first. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay. I said, well, let me think about talking to I want to talk to people at Serve. I want to give them a notice. And in the meantime, after I left, he called my wife and invited her up to his house for dinner on Sunday. So I get home, and my wife says, we got just invited for dinner at this guy from Port Huron's place. And Margaret, it was my first wife who says, Pass. So she and her and I went up for dinner, and Chet just wowed her, and that was it. So we took the job at Port Huron. I gave Serve a 30-day notice, and then I started at Port Huron in March of 1978.
1978. Now, was this true? I thought I remembered this from the old days. Did Chet Woodrinski watch football games from down in the end zone with a cigar in his mouth?
Yes, he did. That was Chet, yep.
Yeah.
He had a cigar in his mouth most of the time. Yeah. In his office at school and at all the games. But he was a unique individual, tough man, but they needed his leadership at that time, and he was a great leader.
Now, the thing is, when you went to Port Huron High and began your illustrious career in the public school system, but within a year or two, there were financial problems.
Yep.
Did they drop football for a year or something?
Dropped sports. When I got there in 1978 season was my first year there, and the school, they lost like 26 football games in a row. So we started to turn the program around and won 3 games the first year, won 5 the second year, and had a great group coming back. And it was 1980-81. They lost a millage, so they dropped athletics, combined schools, went from 3 schools to 2. They had afternoon sessions and morning sessions, and it was a complete disaster. But it gave me an opportunity to work with a guy by the name of Ben Vidakevich. Ben called me, and he was the head coach at St. Clair. So he called me and asked me if I'd be interested in helping him out because they dropped all the sports programs in Port Huron for a year. So I said yes, and actually came down and coached at St. Clair that year with Ben, and we had a great year.
And actually a couple of Port Huron Big Reds
came down,
showed up in St. Clair because at that time I was the principal at Marine City High, and Marine City St. Clair always a big rivalry. And all of a sudden the Chisholm kid
Ronnie
and the
Chisholm, Kevin Watson
kid show up at St. Clair High, and Benny had a phenomenal team there.
Yeah, he did. We had a great year. What happened was that those days you could get a guardian and move in with a guardian.
Yeah.
You can't do that anymore. Yeah. But in those days, that's what happened. And so they came down and played, and we ended up going 8-1. And the only game we lost was 31-30 last game of the year to Marysville.
No boy.
In the barn burners.
That Marysville always been a pain.
They have been, yes.
All right, so then things kind of got back on normal footing in Port Huron. And how long did you actually coach the Big Reds?
I was actually head coach for 4 out of the 5 years. I was the first 5 years I was there. Of course, the 1 year we didn't have sports. Yeah. I came back for 2 more years, and then in 1983 they made me the athletic director. I was the athletic director in the building from 83 to 2009, and then when I retired in 2009, they had the district athletic director was a young man by the name of Ed Peltz. Yeah. I retired in February of 2009, and Mr. Peltz got ill, and Ron Wallin was the superintendent at the time, and I'd worked with Ron at Port Huron High, and he asked me if I'd come out and help him to the end of the year while Mr. Peltz recovered. Mr. Peltz did not recover. He passed away from cancer. And so I was going to be done again after that school year, but it ended up that I was a district athletic director for another 7 years. So.
Wow. It's almost well, let me ask you, let's focus on the coaching for a couple of minutes. You've coached a lot of years, and you've seen a lot of student athletes. Who's the best athlete you probably coached along the way? Probably,
and it was just I coached one of my first years was a kid by the name of Frank Colch. Frank was just a 6'5", 245-pound quarterback at Servite. Later went to Michigan State. Trouble with Frank, he didn't like to go to class all the time. and ended up at Eastern Michigan and played at Eastern Michigan and finished up. But he was also with the pros. He got drafted. In fact, George Perlis, who just recently passed, was a coach with the Steelers, and he really liked Frank because George was from St. Ambrose, the old Eastside Catholic guy, and he knew Frank from there, and he just the pros were on strike that year. The quarterback they had Bradshaw and Hanratty and Gilliam, Jefferson Gilliam. So Frank was the starting quarterback while they were on strike. Well, when the guys came back, they needed 4 quarterbacks, but Perlis told him, "You stay, move you to tight end." Because he was 6'2", 6'5", 260 then, and they were going to move him to tight end. He said, "No, I don't want to play tight end." Came home.
But that'll attest to maybe that guy's talent, because everybody in this area knows Gary Danielson, who played at Purdue, played for the Detroit Lions. Now he's the voice of SEC football on TV every Saturday. And when it came to being the all-Catholic quarterback, the year they were both in high school, it wasn't Gary Danielson.
It was Frank Coach.
It was your guy, Frank.
Yeah, Frank Coach. And he was probably the best all around that. He was a great basketball player. He could throw a baseball through a brick wall. He didn't have the academic interest to go on to school and stuff.
And that happens.
And that happens.
But speaking of leadership and athletic ability, or leadership ability, did you ever have a kid that you identified when he was 16 or 17 years old and he had the snap? You thought, this guy's going to run a company or be governor or something. Who would that have been?
It was a guy by the name of Tommy Kirshner. Tommy Kirshner, and I had coached his brothers. He had Steve and Steve and Tom were the 2 brothers I coached. And Tommy was our quarterback. Not a great athlete. A good athlete, about 5'10", not real big, but was he a leader? I first realized this was junior year, and he was the first kid in the locker room after school, the last kid to leave. And so one night I was there, and I wanted to go home, and he's still in there, kind of fooling around. He says, "Tommy, come on, we got to get out of here." So I took a glance at his locker, and I don't know, this may have to get cut, but it said, in his locker there was a sign. And the sign said, "Was I a bitch today?" And so it was like, I looked at him and said, "Tom, what's it mean?" He goes, "Coach," he said, "I know I'm not the best guy on the team." He says, "But I know if I work as hard as I can every day, I can be better, and I'll get better every day." And he said, "Tommy," he said, "you're my leader." Mm-hmm. And there'd be times during the game, during a timeout or something was going on, and I'd ask him for his opinion. I said, "What do you think, Tom? What do you think we do?" I remember one game, we tied it up late in the game, and the decision was to go for 2. Or we were down by 1. The decision was, do we go for 2 to win it, or do we kick 1 and go into overtime? And he said, "Coach, we got to go for 2. We did, and we didn't make it. We lost the game 14-13, but every kid on the team knew that, believed we could do it, and that was the right thing to do. So, and today he's got his own company, and he's doing really well.
Oh, great. Now, when you, because you're still working in the game, and if people are wondering what that M is on your shirt, after you've retired and showed up like the bad penny in so many different areas, tell us what your present job is.
I am the athletic director at a great little school here in Marine City called Cardinal Mooney, and it's been around since the 80s, I guess, in Marine City. It's in the old Holy Cross building, the Holy Cross High School building, and it's just it's a throwback. Yeah. It's Servite High, St. Ambrose, Holy Cross, all those Catholic schools in the 80s and 70s. That's what it is. The girls wear uniforms. The guys wear khaki pants and white shirts and ties and the whole ball of wax. It was a great opportunity.
So it's like Back to the Future for you, kind of thing. Well, thinking of that, Ken, because you're one of the rare guys that was involved, and when we say 50 years of this, it really has been. And you coached back in the early 70s. You were an AD in the 80s, and now we're in 2020, and you're still in the athletic game with high school students. As How has coaching changed from back in the 70s to today? Is there a difference?
No, without question. The biggest thing I think is the change is the effect of mass media, the parent involvement as far as the negative parent involvement and those kind of things, and it's harder to coach. It's just the feedback you get from parents is a lot of times is negative, and I can remember when I was back at Survey coaching there, the parents were behind you 100%, and sometimes you didn't, you couldn't play every kid every game, but the parents understood it, trying to make the kid feel part of the team. Today, that kid's not playing, they pull them and leave. Yeah. Say, I'm not staying here. My kid's too good to be sitting on the bench, and those kind of things. I think the parent pressures are greater. I think that the skill levels of the kids have improved dramatically, and if you're not keeping up with that, you're going to be in trouble. So, and I think that if you look at the coaches today that are successful, I think they all have one thing in common. I think they're fair, they're honest, and they do what they believe in, no matter what the outcome.
Well, it's interesting because back, even 25 years ago, the irate dad could woof and bark from the bleachers or whatever, but now you got every kid, every parent with the social media and the Facebook and whatever. I got to believe it's a much different game than it was.
It is. It's a great tool for communication with parents and with kids, but it's also a tool you have to watch carefully. And be careful what you say, because it'll be turned a different way. Yeah. So, and I've had to deal with coaches and tell them that I asked him to resign because of some of the comments he made, which he didn't see the problem with, but it's just a different situation today. You've got to be very careful what you say. But the big thing is that now people can say and hide behind the social media. Yeah. They don't even have to identify themselves. They can just put blasts out there, ripping people and saying what they want to without any repercussion.
What about, you've seen coaches over the last 50 years. You're hiring coaches now at Mooney. You've seen some real successful coaches, and you've seen some really unsuccessful coaches, and a whole bunch in the middle. What are some of the characteristics of a successful coach?
Number one, I think they're honest. Be honest with themselves, be honest with their kids. Kids can spot someone as BSing them a mile away. Yeah. So know what you're doing, know what you're talking about. Be credible in what you do. Learn, go to clinics, those kind of things. I think those help make coaches successful. And I think the other thing that they need to do is be honest and be able to communicate with parents. I know when I started coaching, I didn't do that. But now today, I did, and I have to, as an athletic director, is communicate with parents and let them know that you're out there for the best interest of their kid, and you're willing to talk about their kid, but not during the game or after a game. Willing to sit down with them at a different time and different place. So I think those kind of things are what I look for. I look for coaches, honest, sincere, hardworking, will put in the extra time that they need, not there just to get a paycheck.
What are the hiring coaches? You're hiring people now, and with the influx of so many women's sports, you're hiring young men and young women that are going to be coaching for the first time. What traits do you look for?
I look a little bit for their backgrounds and see what they have, what they've done in the past. I try to talk to people that know them, and on their resume, I always look for those people. I try to contact them. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little about this kid as a person. If it's their first coaching job ever, it's kind of you hit and miss with those a lot. But the thing is that you want to look and see if they're sincere, dedicated kind of kid, and if they're willing to work and do the things they need to do. That's a big thing. And I'll be honest with you, I think the young kids that get into it don't understand how much work it is. One of the things the state has done is they've mandated new head coaches, but I ask all our coaches to go to the Coaches Advancement Program, CAP it's called for the MHSA, to give them a little background in what coaching is all about. One of the things that I tell them is there's more than just X's and O's.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. That's the fun part. It's all the things around it, the eligibility questions, all the things they have to deal with, media, whatever it may be. And this class gives them a great opportunity to do that. So I recommend that. In fact, I do teach that class myself, so I understand what it does. So it's a great opportunity for the young people. It's harder and harder to get women, and I'm always looking for good women coaches. If you know of anybody who's a good women coach who wants to coach a sport, I'm always looking for them. I know every school district is.
Who's been influential to you in your life?
Probably I have a lot of people that have been great influences in my life. My mother probably was number one. But as a man, my dad died when I was 7 years old. So there really was my older brothers tried to be that male influence in my life. My brother Russell was probably the most influential of my brothers, my brother Paul, because they were around a lot. But a guy by the name of Jack Carroll probably is my second father. Jack's passed away a few years ago. But Jack, when I was in 5th and 6th grade, was my 5th and 6th grade basketball coach, and kind of took me under my wing. I was not a great basketball player, but every year I was on the team, and he would be the guy that kind of kept me going the straight and narrow, because I could have went the other way. I was on the east side of Detroit in the 60s. There was a lot of things going on that I could have got involved in, that luckily guys like Jack Carroll, Don Sloan, my football coach also, but Jack especially, took me under his wing and got me through school and got me and kept me involved and kind of kept an eye on me. And then when I went to Wayne State and played football there, Jack followed me, and when I graduated, he called me and said, "Listen, I got a job for you." And he hired me at Servite. And the thing was, when I played for Jack, I didn't like him, because he was hard-nosed, the old Catholic school, hard-nosed guy. He smoked a cigar and at basketball practice and made you run up and down the floor, that kind of stuff. And he did, and he was our line coach in football. So I remember my buddy Jerry Faber and I used to get the two-man sled, and we'd try to tip him over on the two-man sled and all that kind of stuff. So we didn't like him. But once I got to know him and work with him, I understood what he was doing. He knew I didn't have a dad. He knew I needed somebody in my life to keep me on the straight and narrow. And as a result, I saw him do this with a number of other kids too.
That's great.
And he became a godfather to us all. And as a result from that, he ended up being the godfather of my oldest son.
Great. So, let me ask you this. If you talk about teaching in that coach the CAP program there, if there was one thing you would tell new young coaches to make sure that they do, and one thing not to do, what would those things be?
Number one, I'd say that I would have them recommend and take the CAP program. That would be the number one thing for all new coaches, and take as many classes as they could, because the information you get there will help you deal with problems later on in life. The second thing that I would tell them not to do is don't do it by yourself. If you don't, because it can become overwhelming. Ask for help. Don't just think that you know all the answers. Ask for help. Go to your AD, go to your assistant coaches, if you're an assistant coach, go to your head coach. Find out what you need to do. Don't take on all those tasks by yourself. Get help. You know, it's hard to be a multitasker, and there's people that can help you out there, so don't try to do it all yourself.
And it's not necessary to be a winner and a successful coach to be screaming all the time.
That's true.
I mean, it does occur maybe.
That does occur,
but some of really good coaches I've seen are pretty mild-mannered. I mean,
the greatest coach I got a chance to see, and it was very young, I got a chance to see John Wooden. I watched him in a game. I used to watch him at games. He'd sit on the bench. He never hardly ever called a timeout. Mm-hmm. He never said anything. He would sit there with his arm folded. He had a program.
He had something rolled up.
And then his other hand, I was told he had a rosary. That's what I was told that. I'm not sure if that's true, but
that's what they say in the Catholic League anyway.
Yeah. And when asked about it, he said, he says, my job is I train them at practice to do the things that they need to do in the game. He says, I don't need to tell them. They already know what to do.
Yeah.
He said, I may call a timeout in a certain situation, but other than that, they know what to do. Yeah. I've trained them to do that. So
that's good. Well,
And
okay.
He wasn't the yeller and screamer. He wasn't the Bobby Knight. The two
Yeah.
opposites, Bobby
Totally,
Knight and
yeah.
John Wooden.
Let me ask you this. Down the road, way down the road, we're going to celebrate your 90th birthday.
Okay. So
Probably be at the old coach's home at that time. But we're going to celebrate your 90th birthday. Hopefully you're not still being an athletic director and take a little time off, but how would you like people to remember Ken Semelsberger?
number one, I was fair. I was honest. I worked hard. Did the best job I could do every single day. I was told one time by Jack Carroll, my mentor, who told me, he says, you know, Ken, when you get hired, do the best job you can from the day you start to the day you leave. And I want people to remember me that he did the best job he could from the day he started till the day he dies.
Great answer. For our audience at home, I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Ken Semelsberger, and you can see why he is still in demand 50 years later to work with young people in the athletic arena. He's at Cardinal Mooney now. He's, as I mentioned at the top of the show, Catholic League put him in their Hall of Fame, the Port Huron Area Sports Hall of Fame, the Athletic Director Hall of Fame. He's won the Forsyth Award, which is a statewide award only given to one person per year. He picked that up, I think, in 2003. But Kenny is a fine example of somebody who works with your children, your grandchildren, to have a well-rounded education and an athletic experience. It's been our pleasure on Conversations to have Kenny Semelsberger as our guest today. Thanks, Ken.
You've been watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey. Conversations explores the past, the present, and the future of the communities in which we live through the eyes of interesting individuals. If you have an idea for a future conversation, please contact us at www.watchctv.org. Thanks for watching Conversations with Tom Shorkey.